Hey, what's up, fellow Age Groupies? Welcome back to another episode of the Age Groupies podcast, part of the United WeCast Network. I'm Mike Ergo, and along with my co-host Lindsay Heiken, we're here to talk to you all about things related to endurance sports from an amateur athlete perspective. We talk about how to have fun along the way and stop taking ourselves so seriously. You guys can follow along on Instagram at Age Groupies, join the Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Heiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have any questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us, agegroupies@gmail.com. We read those, every single one, you guys, so thank you for all the feedback you've been sending. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, because it really helps us reach more people. Today's guest is Angel Paternostro-Pfister. In 2019, she went all over the U.S. and completed 6 full Ironman and 3 half Ironman triathlons. That's 9 total, you guys. She did this to raise $25,000 for the IRONMAN Foundation as part of the Live Today campaign. She wants to encourage everybody to live today because tomorrow is not promised. And her mission is to show others that despite facing adversity through trauma and loss, you can defy the odds, create a safe path, and define your life by what you are doing today. You guys, you're going to enjoy this. Angel brings a lot of passion and a lot of excitement and positive energy to the sport. So I had a lot of fun talking with her. And without anything else, let's get to the show. Angel, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on Age Groupies.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor.
It's cool. We've been talking back and forth for a little bit, and I have been following you and your races this year, and it's a pretty inspiring journey. So can you tell us, all the listeners, exactly what you did this year and how many races you completed?
Yeah, this year I did nine Ironmans or 6 fulls and 3 halves. It was, the goal was to raise $25,000 for IRONMAN Foundation. So turned out to be like 1,054 miles. We built in some cushion in case some swims were canceled, which one was, so it worked out. But
wow,
that's what we had on tap this year.
So raised $25,000. Move your body, self-powered, over 1,000 miles. So what give you the idea to do this? For most people, just doing one Ironman in a year is a daunting enough feat.
I did last year. I had done 3 fulls, and the idea was, I think I called it the trifecta for charity. And just before the last one, I mean, that year was filled with some challenges, and a couple people close to me had passed away and gotten sick. And just before Ironman Florida, which of course that was the race where Hurricane Michael had hit Florida, and the race was being moved from Panama City to Haines City. But even with all that, which was really affected me, I got a phone call the night before that race that a colleague of mine had succumbed to cancer and was going into hospice. And at the time, it affected me, but throughout the race is really when I felt it. And it, makes you think, like, he had only been sick for about a year. And I had other people who had touched my life. One was sick for six weeks from diagnosis to death. A couple others, substance abuse issues, passed away, suicides. And it was like, if I only had 6 weeks to live, and more importantly with my one colleague, a year, and he was only in his 47, 48, like, have I really done everything I want to do in life? And I think as you start getting older, I'm in my early 40s now, those incidents impact you more, or they don't. For some people, it's just, you just keep going on. It's like, yeah, that's unfortunate. But I tend to be a sensitive person to begin with. And I was like, there's so much more that I feel I can do. Like, am I really doing enough in the world to make a difference? And Ironman for me is really this special place that I find it's incredibly healing. And it forces me, like the time frame of the races, to go to places that I really would not otherwise not go. And I'm like, you know what? I know this is a healthy place for me, and in a way I can do more. And that kind of is what sprung it, the idea, during that Ironman Florida race, which really meant a lot to me. That's a pretty special race to me.
Well, yeah. So you got 140.6 miles to think about your life, and that's a lot of time for me, that takes about, it's at least 12 hours. So you got half a day to think about things, including existential questions. So what's special about Florida for you?
Well, Florida was always a special place when I was growing up. I mean, my dad was a private school, Catholic school football coach. My mom was a teacher, and I look back and think about the things that they were able to do on not a lot of money. And one of the big things was always we would go down to Disney World, which was like, really the place I'd say I became a dreamer. But he was this kind of giant of a guy, big, football coach, played for Notre Dame. And like, he would just turn into a marshmallow when it came to Disney and, Christmas too. And it was just one of those places where when we went there, nobody was sick because he had some health issues. So the state is set. Like anytime I would talk about Florida, it was just a positive space. And then when the hurricane happened, I remember sitting with my husband, Russ, and, we were watching things on Facebook and obviously the news about the devastation. And, it really struck me. I saw some of the comments that people were making. As athletes, we could be selfish, but it was mostly, that complaining that, if the race wasn't going to happen or if it was switched. And I'm like, then you see pictures of like homes that are just gone.
Yeah.
Like it looked like bombs went off, especially for, Panama City Beach. I think it was Mexico Beach. Like, and as a kid, when I was about 5, our house had burned down. And it was one of the first times in a long time that, I thought back on that. Like, there's certain things when that happens to you, like distinct smells, like
yes,
take you right back there. And I was like, these people, they've lost everything. And I knew what that felt like. I mean, obviously I was very small at the time, but I'm like, think about that. They had nothing. I remember the race director, Ben, saying, like, save your transition bags because they could use them. Like, these people don't even have bags to put things in that they have now.
Wow, that puts it in perspective. Save your transition bags for people to use.
Yeah. And I just was like, I think you can easily get caught up in your life and forget, that everything could change in a minute. I was at the time I was very busy. I'm an attorney in my law practice. And I found that you can easily get caught up and forget about like what's really important in life. And I just was, when I got down there, it was, everything just felt right. I didn't have a great race. I mean, I that year I was really always scrambling to get training in.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you had a busy life.
Yeah. And it was just like, I got it during the race. I felt like, what, I got to make some changes because obviously, I think that race I was in like hour 15 or maybe it was even later. But I didn't feel it, it was so enjoyable and it poured through that race at the end. But it's just, sometimes in races, the hardest ones, I remember at a race in Lake Placid, I finished, I think it was 62 seconds to spare. It was in, I think,
oh, wow.
18. Yeah. And like people like, what's your favorite? I'm like, you know what? That was probably one of the ones that really stick out to me because it's like the hardest ones, and that was another one. Like I didn't have the training I needed under my belt. A lot of life stuff was going on. And I remember coming down Lake was it is it Lake Placid Drive or Mirror Lake Drive, and I had a Penn State shirt on because I had gotten a graduate program degree from there, and a guy was like totally, cheering me on. He's like, "You can make it."
Yeah.
And I mean, at so many points during that race, I was like, well, as my husband will tell you, I won't get off the course, like unless I'm pulled off. But I was like, man, I'm just going to keep going, but I'm sure, I'm not going to make the cutoff. And it was like unbelievable to me that I had, and it really showed me like, if you dig down and just keep going, so much is possible. And I was coming down, and I think it was Heather Jackson was down there, and I remember Mike Riley, and in the one, and you cross the line in the video, you can hear Mike Riley saying to Heather, these are like the 17 hours, they didn't, what did he say? They're crossing, but they're not probably going to make it. And there had been somebody on his bike following me, because at one point I was going to be the last person. And so I knew like the time, I knew some of the time frame, but my watch had died, of course.
Yeah. When you get that deep.
The one announcer goes, she made it. And Mike Riley, you could see in this little blip of this finish line video, like, oh, she made it. Because it was under, of course, I had to make under, my specific 17 hours. But that was really an epic one. I remember Russ was like, so happy. Like the look on his face was pretty awesome. But it was like at that point in time, I'm like, you know what? Like I told Brent one time, like I said to myself, I'm never letting that happen again. Like that's way too close.
Yeah, that's cut very close. So you got inspired after Florida and said you wanted to like re-examine how you're living life and then make an impact in the world to raise money for the IRONMAN Foundation. How'd you get started? How'd you put this together? How'd you go from doing 3 Ironman races in 1 year to putting this whole thing together and decided that you really wanted to go for it in 2019?
Well, the Ironman Florida race I had done for IRONMAN Foundation. And I think I'd done one other one, I think it was Boulder previously. And, Sarah Hartman is just incredible.
God,
she has an incredible heart. And I mean, it's just like Brent is the same way, and and I don't think people understand like the amount of work that they do and the amount of time, but their heart, it's infectious.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was, I have a community service background in college. I did a lot of community service work, and that's kind of like, that's where my passion is, really is why I got into law in the first place. And when I was around them at that race, of course it was, for, Hurricane Michael relief efforts, which was emotional at the time for everybody. Like I felt like, okay, I'm where I need to be. It just clicked. And so then from that, I think that year, I think that might've been the only one I did maybe I did one other one for IRONMAN. I had done one for multiple myeloma, Lake Placid Research Foundation. But the thought was, I wanted it to be something that challenged me personally. And they always say, if it doesn't scare you a little, it's not a big enough challenge. And there was, definitely throughout the year, like, I'm big on, I take it one race at a time. My husband does all the logistics and he'll get going, Russ will get going and going. I'm like, I can't think about 3 races away. I can only think about today.
Yeah, no kidding. That's so cool that you have him to do the long-term planning and logistics.
Yeah. He's incredibly supportive too. But I thought I needed, one race, like obviously you have a whole day, right? So, and that seemed to be, it clicked for me personally to like kind of self-exam, like it's the one space I felt like there's no phones, there's no anything. And you go into like almost like a pain cave that's like, you look at stuff that you would never otherwise take the time to.
Yeah.
Or I found that I could always power through, but not really address. So I wanted to create a period of time that like a space to heal essentially. And I knew that I had linked 3 together already. And yes, it was challenging, but I didn't feel it was challenging enough for me. I tend to like, I love, like I've fallen into endurance because I seem to gain strength as I go. I'm not a sprinter.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Not being a sprinter part.
Yeah. And so, I wanted to create it over time. And then I wanted something that like would be eye catching from the perspective of like, to be able to raise 25,000. And I thought like, it's something that, some people might believe to a certain extent is unattainable. And if I can really do it, it would, show people that if you put your mind to something, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Now, obviously that comes with sacrifice and I knew also doing it that it would force me to make changes. Like I knew I couldn't enter into it and kind of, not put the solid focus on it that maybe if you do 1 or 2, I was able to power through, and balance things to a certain extent. And that's kind of where it came out of. And think about like, okay, if you were to raise that amount of money, how many people would you be able to help?
Yeah.
And that's what I saw with IRONMAN Foundation. Like, and I tell people all the time, like, you have no idea that, these funds go directly to help people. And I've been involved in different charities and things, but like this one, like when you're building 130 or more bikes in a weekend and you're giving them out to kids in need, like I know what it was like for me with my bike as a kid. Like I was a BMX kid and I had like a Schwinn banana seat that I pretended was like, a dyno, dyno BMX bike with the, the cool wheels and stuff. And I had hand-me-down bikes, and I remember I was like probably 12 or 13 when my dad came home he had stopped at like Toys R Us and found this, I think it was a Huffy. It was a Huffy. And it like, I wanted to sleep with that thing, so it's incredibly liberating for kids. And to see the faces on kids, like, I've seen pictures and stuff and, when they get these bikes. And so,
yeah, that bike for a kid is so cool. I've been part of that when we did it out in Santa Rosa here. And that is so fun. And I remember too, what it was like to get a bike. And I mean, as a kid, obviously not being able to drive, that is how you get more than a few steps away from your house.
It's like freedom.
Oh, completely. So
and the kids
what let's talk about some of the races you did. Can you list them in order, the ones you did this year?
Yeah. Let me think back now. Haines City 70.3 in Florida. Gulf Coast in Florida. Boulder. That was a full. After Boulder, it was. Hold on. Lake Placid, I guess that would have been, and then after Placid was Wisconsin, Louisville, Florida, Arizona, but I think I'm missing.
I think you're missing one. I got 8. It's crazy when you can lose track of how many Ironman, races you've done in a year.
Yeah, I think there was one. Let's see, Florida half, Boulder. That was June. So July was. Did you do Maryland at all, or
no, Atlantic City?
Maryland. No, I didn't really do anything local. Placid was the closest race that I did. So it was Lake Placid, and then so that was late July. So August would have been. That's probably the one I'm missing because I remember we.
Well, in case we don't figure it out today, then I'll put it in the show notes. Number 9. So you're training. Are you self-trained?
Oh, I did.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I did the main half. That might be the one.
Okay. There you go. Yeah. We didn't count that.
Yeah. I mean, Russ had done some racing and cycling. So really, I mean, Russ is my coach. So we pretty much plan out our training in sections. I mean, essentially everybody was asking him this year, like, how did you do it? In terms of, did you plan peaks or I remember one person said, so essentially, are you just always in, I think it was recovery?
Yeah, really.
But I mean, really, no. We did do cycles, like where, we had certain races that we were trying to see if there could be a peak there and carry over a peak. But I find that I do some of my best training, and I always have been this way, like, really kind of in my own zone. I'm not big on training and Russ used to ride and do criteriums, I think they're called.
Doing like group rides, group runs and all that stuff. Yeah, me either.
Because I tend to, even with Russ, and it's kind of funny, when we're riding, I'd be like, get off my wheel. Like he'd have my wheel and stuff. And I think it's more for me, because we ride out here. I mean, I'm in a country area. It's Northwest New Jersey, up by the top of New Jersey, next to Pennsylvania and New York. And it's hilly. We do the highest point is High Point. We do some of those climbs from our house, which is several hour ride. And you're on the road. And I'm very cautious in terms of, being safe on the road. And, I kind of say to him, like, listen, if I hit my brakes or, squirrel jumps out, we have this debate all the time, by the way, you'll be right in my tire. And he's like, oh, we get out of the way. I'm like, no. So I always wanted to be like, bike length or more behind me. But that's the part about group riding. And I think like sometimes, I see the benefit of group rides. You can get a cadence, you can whatever. But, in Ironman, like you can't do any drafting.
Exactly.
I have this debate with people. I'm like, you can't do any drafting. So to me, the concept of the group ride, I don't know. Like I want to work as hard as I can when I'm training.
Yeah. It almost feels bad to do a group ride because you're like, I'm drafting.
Right.
We've been conditioned.
Yeah. And, and then long runs and stuff, I do a lot of trail running, really to save my knees. So a lot of, really the majority of long training runs are done on the trail.
Hey, Mike, did I ever tell you about the time I went to a popular cycling studio and it was super bizarre? I was dressed like regular scumbag trainer clothes and everyone else had on, matching Lululemon, full face of makeup. And the instructor kept yelling, ladies, let's dance, which I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like,
that's so weird.
Let's dance. Are we riding? Anyway, that all happened because I was trying to maintain cycling fitness during the winter.
Yeah, winter months are tough. Days are shorter. It's cold. It's rainy. Takes a lot of extra time to gear up, and a lot of those rides are going to get canceled anyways because it's going to be too dangerous outside. Anyways, I spent a lot of my time indoors training, even during the summer months, just because I got small kids and I want to get this training done early. I also love group classes, but I spend majority of my time training alone in my garage. That can be pretty boring. So we have a way for our listeners to make that training during the off season or during the winter months or whenever you want really exciting. CycleCast app provides studio quality classes for both indoor cycling and running.
Awesome. Who needs to see a bunch of other weirdos on spin bikes anyways? We need an instructor who has an ear for music that will get us hammering those pedals and a ride plan that keeps us engaged during long trainer sessions.
Yes, I finally tried it, and it's exactly what I got from CycleCast. So they use your own music through your phone in this app, which works for Android. It works for iOS, so it doesn't matter what kind of phone you have. It uses minimal data, minimal battery power, and it's your phone. You bring it everywhere you go. So you got classes from different instructors at different lengths. It doesn't matter what time of day or night you're doing it. You can do it all on your own schedule.
That's awesome. Plus, the running programs are both indoor and outdoor, which is huge for me as I train for Trans Rockies this year. I'm doing a combination of treadmill and trail, and the treadmill is about as exciting as the trainer. So this is definitely helping me make those sessions more engaging. And as our gift to Age Groupies listeners, we have an awesome promo. Go to cyclecast.com/activate and enter the code GROUPIES to get a 30-day free trial on top of the regular 7-day free trial. That's like 5 weeks of free stuff, y'all. That's cyclecast.com/activate, CYCLECAST. Don't forget to use the promo code GROUPIES, GROUPIES. Cyclecast. You're going to love where this app takes you.
What are you eating and consuming to give you energy during the race and during training?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a vegetarian, so we've really tried to shift nutrition. I mean, that's something we've been juggling with this year. I mainly trained with Tailwind.
Heard good stuff about that.
And yeah, I've had a lot of luck with it. I used to, love Scratch. And I still use Scratch in training sometimes and stuff, but I had trouble in Boulder last year, gut-wise. I tried taking in I used to love those little gummy that Scratch would make, but right immediately I knew, okay, it was like mile 75 on the bike. I'm like, can't do that. So we switched over to Tailwind, and I used that all throughout the bike. And then what I did, and I'm notoriously bad with hydration, but I'm convinced that's how I'm wired. But so it's always a challenge for me. Like I pretty much try to take something in every 10 to 15 minutes. And I found that like I'm still probably not taking it enough, as Russ will clearly tell anyone. But I'm always trying to balance it out. Like it's amazing. He can take in so much, but it would make me sick. Like
so he's like a camel. He can just devour things, and you have to be more selective.
Like the amount of just liquid that he takes in, I don't know how many bottles on the ride. And I remember I finished up Arizona and Florida, and he had grabbed my bike. He's like, "You're in trouble." And I knew it too. And I did really good in Arizona because I think it was like every 15 minutes, but then I had switched to add honey stingers, the waffles in, because I had listened to Rich Roll, and he's freaking awesome, and he tries to take in as much solids, like so Russ and I were talking. I'm like, I really want to switch to that because I can't do gels. I used to be able to do gels, but for the past 2 years I haven't done any gels, and I'm like, I think because we're really more whole plant based, where that's our regular diet, so it's kind of nonsensical then when you're racing to try to throw in all this stuff and expect that your stomach's not going to reject
exactly.
So, that was the thing with Honey Stinger. I'm like, maybe I can start incorporating something like that and just add on. And they work great. I had no issue with them. Typically the issue I have is when I get off the bike, like I don't want any tail, like I can't take tail, like I can't even taste it, and I jump to like essentially cola, water, and Gatorade on the course. I usually dilute the Gatorade, but I tend to not have the best luck with Gatorade on the run gut wise. Try to throw in some grapes, like whatever they have. But it still seems to be something I'm working at. But I've always been kind of someone who, like, I'll go out on a long run and I don't take a water bottle really unless I'm maybe 12 or 14 more miles out or planning on it. Yeah, but I'm also like I love listening to and watching Anton Kripicka, and I probably developed some habits from that. But I mean, I think some people, they can just go, and not, but I mean, it is a fault, I think, that I have to get better.
Yeah, well, it's good in the sense that you don't need to be sipping on something every single second, but I could see how you could get into trouble maybe on the long course. What were some of the highlights of the year for you, or what were some of the real memorable moments of your journey?
I would have to say Ironman Wisconsin was a big highlight. We added Wisconsin and Louisville, 2 races I had never done. And I knew they were both, they weren't ones that I would pick. Like, I had tried to pick like places that, I had wanted to go or would love to go, or, I love Colorado, so I always want to be there. And so we kind of had those on there. I was like, well, they'll be interesting. Like Wisconsin, it's in the Midwest, and I love the countryside. That'll be cool. But I didn't have any expectations. And, I got there and fell in love with it. It was so peaceful that, like, the instant I got there, it was just like, some places just fit. And the course is, you're biking through it's like rolling hills, but it's a kind of bike course I like. And it was all through farms, and which was just an incredible landscape. And then the run was, through, was it Camp Randall Stadium, and you literally run on the field, cool. Which is like amazing. 2 times. The people were so nice. And then the rest of the run, you're pretty much running through the University of Wisconsin's campus, which is an incredible campus. They have a whole section. It's like a nature preserve along the lake, and then through the downtown section, and I met some great people. Dave Orlowski was there.
Yeah, I love Dave.
Incredible. Yeah, he's great. And Isabella from Team IMF, who's just an incredible person. Her son was racing, and I had a decent run there. I'm still, the challenging part for me, even though my background has been running, has been continue to try to get my run times down. I had a decent bike there, but it was just the overall experience, like met just the people of Wisconsin, and the race setting, and it totally took me by surprise. Oh, and P.S. the swim was like being in a washing machine.
A lot of chop.
So, and I totally didn't expect that, because I'm like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
And now I seem to be excelling more so in the oceans, which is shocking to me. But I was like, oh, a lake, okay. And you get in, and it was like it was a washing machine, and so it was a challenge, and when I got out, I'm like, well, it's one of those, like, okay, I survived the swim, I can do this.
Oh, right. If I can make it through the swim, the rest of it should go down well.
Yeah, and it was cold, and I'm tend to be a warm weather racer. I seem to thrive on the hotter it is. So it was a challenging race, from that perspective, but I had a great experience. Lake Placid is always a great experience. I mean, the more races I do, the more, that race just seems to always be something special. And of course, Ironman Florida, being able to get back down there just because it is a special place for me. And I hadn't raced, I did the half on Gulf Coast, but the full last year had been in Haines City. So it was the first time I did the full there. And to that community, like on the run, there's always, people out of their houses cheering you on. Of course, Arizona, and I had never I had been racing in Arizona. It was only the second time I was in Arizona, and I really love that race too. Just from what you're seeing on the, there's nothing like looking up from your aero position and seeing some epic cactus.
I bet, yeah, those big saguaro cactus.
Yeah. So I'd say those were probably the highlight. I love Boulder, like racing there. So that's, and that was a full. I guess they're not doing the full this year. But I always liked that course. I know some people had issues, but I can't ever say anything negative. I've always found it to be.
So were you
the people would be great.
Were you able to hit your fundraising goals?
Yeah, I'm at, well, I think my thermometer reads 21 or 22, but I have some pledges coming in. Cool. So the expectation is by the 31st that it'll be at 25.
Oh, great. And we'll put a link to your fundraising page. So listeners who feel inclined, feel inspired by your story can donate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I do is that anybody who makes a donation of $250 or more, I custom thrift a vintage T-shirt of your genre and size.
Oh, that is choice. So cool.
Yeah.
What would you do differently, if anything, having done this, these 9 races over the year and traveling around the country?
I try to live with no regrets. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think you learn from everything. So of course you think back, and we were actually, Russ and I were talking, and I think the only thing, every time I get deeper into the experience of racing, like I always kind of dial back to like wanting to focus even more on training. But I would say, and we did all this also by vehicle. So I would never change that. And that was totally unexpected as well. We brought our 2 rescue pups with us, and that was kind of the impetus behind driving, was from a caretaking and not wanting to be away from them, as they're a vital part of my healing. So we kind of like, well, let's try it. And it was like, once you start to do, we have like a cargo van, and it was the best decision we ever made. Like I would never change the experiences that we had on the road.
That sounds like the ultimate road trip.
But I would.
You got your dogs driving around the country to go race different Ironman events.
And we weren't the best with like planning out, like, we weren't, even though I tend to be type A personality, when we got on the road, we weren't like, okay, well, we're going to stop here and we already have this hotel booked or whatever. We kind of did it where we go as far as we could and then look for a hotel. And we always stayed at La Quinta because they're pet friendly. Right. And then, when we get to races and stuff, we really tried to do this as simply as possible to stay conscious of keeping it simple. So we stayed in like Airbnbs and stuff. And I wouldn't change that. I would like to try to do it where we convert the cargo van to, that has a bed.
Oh, yeah. Like one of those travel live-in vans.
Yeah, but we've looked at like what people do with them, and I'm like, I don't want to sink. Like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Yeah. You can have your camp stove. You don't need a stove in there. Like, just like Alex Hinault's, his van. I don't know if you've seen his van. But when he was living out of it, it was super simple. Some of these get so high end. It's like, what's the point? I get it. You want to stay all the time, but like I don't know, I tend to like want to keep things real as simple as possible. So, and the only thing in terms of changing is such a tough question, but I would say planning out what to see in the state or along the way. Like,
the things in between the races.
We had said, if we did it again, I'd probably want to see. I'd want to see more of the national parks. Like we hit a couple. I'm big on visiting colleges. It's a great active recovery the day after a race, and I always like to be around young people have an energy of let's make a difference, and it's infectious, and you can feel that on a college campus, and I like being around that. And we hit a ton, and we also we had a lot of rain, and we started stopping into Harley Davidson dealerships. I've always been intrigued with vintage Harleys, and was around.
Yeah, I saw those pictures of you guys stopping in there. That was cool.
Yeah, and you know what? It really was. That was an incredible experience because you'd walk in, you're just looking around. A lot of those dealerships, they're almost museum like what you see. They have old bikes, a lot of history. But when you would talk to people, they were so welcoming and interested, and a lot were veterans. And they were just in browsing, or whatever, or the salespeople were there, and it was just really great conversation. And there's people from all walks of life. So we started doing that a little bit more, and if I had to do it again, I'd probably try to hit as many as I could, because everyone is different. And they do a lot of charity work. We were talking to them about the project we were working on, and everybody was interested. Genuinely interested, which you can always tell when you're talking.
Yes,
to somebody.
Exactly. If they're looking around or looking at their watch or phone.
Exactly, and it was a similar dynamic, where a lot of the salespeople there had things in their lives that changed their lives, and they got into motorcycling, and now they're they loved it so much, and they're so passionate about it that they were selling Harleys, which essentially sell themselves. But I saw a lot of parallelisms there. I got they would, in talking to them, they're telling you about their lives, and which is a lot of what the project that we've been doing. It's really life journey, and very similar, where you have changed the course of your life essentially for something you're passionate about. My life, Russ and I were just talking yesterday, we were somewhere, and he's look how different everything is now from where I was last year this time. And it was stark. That realization was stark in talking to other people about the changes they made in their lives. They went from being an accountant, or one gentleman had been a real estate agent. I think we met him down in Alabama, and now he was selling motorcycles, happier than ever. And so I could certainly empathize with that.
No kidding. Well, so we have a lot of people listening to the show that are either just getting into endurance sports, or have don't have the long resume that you have. So I imagine some people listening to this and be like, "Oh my God, I could never do a full Ironman, let alone 6 fulls and 3 halves in a single year." What would you tell people that have that passion, but might be scared that they don't have what it takes to go the distance?
I get that question a lot, and I always tell people you just have to start, and don't be overwhelmed by the task. Really getting into it. It starts with I've talked to people who they're not even into running, and I'm and they're I'll never be able to do it. I'm yes, you can. You have the capacity to do it. You just have to start. You can't just keep planning for tomorrow, because tomorrow might never happen.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me, so I'm like, okay, you're not having a great day today, but get outside and take a 10-minute walk. Even if you just do a 10-minute walk, and tomorrow, or for the week, do a 10-minute walk. And then next week, increase it by 5 minutes or whatever. That's how I got started. I wasn't an endurance athlete to start. I mean, I played, basketball, field hockey, and softball. There's running, but nothing
right.
like
That's
this.
more
And
sprinting, start, stop kind of stuff.
Right. And I kind of got into running when I was recovering from, I think it was my freshman year of college. After the ACL, I had an ACL reconstruction, but I wasn't a runner. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to go out X minutes. And then I just kept doing it. And then I would gradually try to increase by minutes. I didn't focus on distance at all. And I think if you are methodical about just continuing to exercise, do something every day, and then try to do a 5K, and incrementally doing that, because otherwise I tell everyone, if you try to take it on all at once, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, no kidding.
And you're going to feel like there's just no way I could possibly do that. But you can, it's a mindset. It's definitely a mindset, and it's a commitment. You can't say, well, when I'm this age, because I did that. I was like, well, but when I'm this age, I'll have the time, and I'll be able to fully focus on it. And that's when I'm going to do it. And the problem is life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And sometimes bad habits, unhealthy habits. And you're like, okay, well, now I absolutely can't. I'm 50 pounds heavier. There's just no way I'm going to be able to do it. I don't have the time or space. But really, if you don't make the time for things that challenge you, you're going to fall into a rut and have, in my opinion, very negative, I don't want to say behaviors, but repercussions. Yeah. If you don't have exercise in your life, that's certainly going to happen.
No, that's a great point. Well,
but I tell everyone, if you put your mind to something, you can do it. I mean, you can do it. It's just it's a mindset. And yeah, everybody has self-doubt. I mean, I have self-doubt. I mean, when I went into this season, I was like, I don't even see it. I didn't even express it to Russ. It's almost like if you say it,
yeah, you don't want to jinx it.
But I'm like, man, yeah. I'm like, when I took it on, I thought a lot can go wrong here. And I'm, I really pride myself in, I don't like setting goals that I don't meet. And I was like, wow, what if and my constant worry was the bike because, I always worry about
the tires. Yeah.
So, and I'm the worst with I remember at Lake Placid this year, which was my second fall, and Brent was there, and I come in the morning, and I went to pump my rear tire, which the most nervous I get is pumping my tires. Once my tires are pumped, I'm fine. But it's like everything to me can go wrong because I'm nervous about doing it. And we've practiced some more and stuff, but the one stem I have on my bike, it just gives me a problem sometimes. So of course I had let air out the night before, went to pump the tire, and it all the air comes out. Well, then I can't get the stem.
Oh God. Yeah.
So then I run to tech, and Brent gets there, and he's like, I'm like, where's Angel? And there's no bike. We have a big problem. Like, no, it was my tires. He's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, that's my biggest worry is getting air in the tires in the morning, or, at a flat, which I have a little cheat sheet in my head of how to do a flat. But, those are things that people get surprised that, that runs through my head, but I'm like, yeah, those are things you think about, if you get, start getting dehydrated or whatever, and, all of those things that could have happened. But if I were to fixate on what I found is like, I kept telling myself, like, I can't think like that. You can't
Yeah, you
think
can
that
what if
about
it to
what's going to
death.
go wrong.
You can
You
think
can't.
there's so many things that
Yeah,
could
I
go
mean,
wrong, but there's no advantage to thinking through them and putting yourself in that kind of fear state. You're right.
It's a negative
Yeah.
energy. And for people who like are like, I want to do a marathon, but and they're like, but I'm like, stop. You can't get lost in the buts. Like if you're going to do it, you write it down and put it in that, and put that goal in a place. Like I used to carry it like in my wallet, put it on your dresser in the morning. And each day you get up, like look at it or look at a picture, like someone that you admire. Like I have like a little inspiration, like I'm big on like an inspiration board, and it has just, nobody else needs to see it. You just, but look at it, because if you're looking at it, when you're ready to do something that's not productive, or not healthy for you, like it'll resonate in your head that, you can do that. You can be that person. You can complete the Ironman. You can do, like some people do these 100-mile races.
Yeah, no kidding.
At some point, it's not like they're superhuman. They just set their mind to it, worked at it, focused on it, and you can make tons of excuses like that. Like I can't stand that when people are, either blame the race or whatever. It's like things happen in races. It happens, but you need, if that were to, like, something derailed you, you need to examine it and be like, okay, how can I do that better? That was my late class at an 18. Yeah, everybody's thinking, oh, it's wonderful, you finished. But I was like, it was an epic race, but I finished with like 62 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
So, is what I always go back to. Like, I can't let that happen. Like that's way too close. Like, I don't want to be an hour 16. Like, my goal is to continue improving, and because that's what's going to take you to places that you didn't believe that you could get to.
Well, Angel, it's been so fun to follow your journey over the year, over Instagram and Facebook, and see, what you're doing in all the different cities you went to, and just your passion for life and racing and for helping people really came through. So I appreciate being able to keep up with you, and I appreciate your time today on the show.
No, absolutely. It's great. It's great to be talking
to you.
And
so what do you have next, and how can people find out about it?
Well, we're still working on next year's calendar. I don't like to focus on like the amount of miles, because like you were just saying, sometimes it scares people away. Like, oh, like, it's just, oh, well, I can't do that. But it's called the Race Across America.
Ooh.
So we're doing, something similar in the sense of traveling throughout the US, but, what we found in traveling over the US was there's a lot of ways to touch people's lives in doing that. And there's a lot of people here in the US that need help. We met, including yourself, a lot of incredible veterans. And, I think, when they and I've never been someone to kind of like talk about my story, because I always say, the details of how I got to where I am in terms of my past, I don't want to focus on. I want to focus on what those events led me to as a person, and what I'm doing now with it. Like, in terms of creating something positive from it. I'm pretty transparent about, I have had, multiple traumas in my past, but where is that taking you? Like, did it destroy you? No. And if it didn't destroy you, what positive are you going to take from that to try to help other people who might be struggling?
God, I love that. Yeah.
And I found that I do better sharing that, more so on face-to-face, like in just like, I enjoy listening to people's stories, and so I wanted to do more of that.
Oh, very cool.
And obviously when we're at a race, you're doing the service projects, that's a given. Those are tremendous experiences. But as simply as walking into a Harley Davidson dealership and you're standing there with someone who, you didn't know 10 minutes ago, and just like talking about stuff, and it lends itself to getting to know people throughout the country, who, I know one guy, he was in Alabama too. He saw my sneakers, which are Hoka's, and he's like, I've been talking about trying to do a 5K, and it just opens up to conversations. So I wanted to do something where we see more of the U.S. We didn't see the top half really. Yeah. We hit 37 states, I think Russ counted up. Yeah. And so I'd like to have a little more time in between the races to do service projects, whether it be at like VA hospitals or nursing homes, to kind of stop in. So that's where we're headed. We haven't detailed out the schedule, but obviously it's for IRONMAN Foundation. And I like to increase my goals, so without giving it away too much, there'll be more miles races.
Well, this is a good teaser.
My money goal will obviously be higher.
I like it.
Yeah. But logistically, which is funny, we joke with Russ about logistics, because I don't, I'm geographically challenged, although I've gotten much better this year, but he'll be like, that one's here and this one, we have a map up. And he's like, so we've been mapping out, how we can do it.
Very cool. Well, I'll have all our listeners check out the show notes to catch up with you on social media so they can follow all of this stuff and see what you're doing. It's really inspiring. And I just appreciate you taking the time to share with us. And I know we're going to have you back on sometime in the near future to talk about what you have going on for 2020.
Awesome.
Thank you, Angel.
Alrighty, that concludes today's episode of the Age Groupies podcast with me, Lindsay Hyken, and my co-host, Mike Ergo. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hyken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as this really helps us get more exposure while we try to grow this little venture. And of course, if you have friends you think might like the show, please be sure to share it with them. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.